What's going on, boxing fans? Julian Williams with The Distance. I'm here to give you my long-awaited top 5 welterweights. I've been meaning to do this for a while now. I've actually amended the list a few times. Number 5 was something that I've been debating for the longest, and that's one of the reasons I hadn't done my top 5 welterweights, just because I debated who number 5 was going to be. Could it be Felix Trinidad? Could it be, possibly Oscar De La Hoya or Ike Corte or Lloyd Honeygam, I think is how you pronounce his name. It's like, who can it be? James Buddy McGirt. So many people that I could name. Jose Napoles, Emil Griffith. It's a lot of people to think about name when you're thinking of your top 5 welterweights, because the welterweight division, you had a lot of great welterweights in in history. Just so many. And dating back to like the first champion to now, you always had some great history with the welterweight division. But you had kind of this thing from the 1940s, after Sugar Ray Robinson was the champion, to like when Kid Gavilan, who held the championship for about 3 years following Sugar Ray Robinson. You just had this thing where you would have people who were champions for a short period of time, and it wasn't until this man in 1976 ended up having pretty much had a long reign as a champion, and this man is Jose Pipino Cuevas. He held the championship for 4 years, 1976 to 1980. Lost the championship to another person we're going to meet this week. But anyway, Jose Pipino Cuevas. His career started like in the 70s, in the early 70s, and in his career he had a lot of losses early in his career. Lots of them. Fought, I believe, primarily out of Mexico. And a lot of the people on his resume that he lost to are people that we never really heard of. In boxing, he wasn't even losing the legends, and he had a record of 35 wins, 15 losses, and 31 knockouts on his record. So he had quite a bit of losses, on his record. But he was fighting. But he fought for about 4 or 5 years, and he fought 4 or 5 years, and then right before he fought for the welterweight championship, he actually lost. Because he was fighting for a while. He was fighting every 2 months, and he actually lost the fight before he won the championship in 1976. He fought Angel Espada. And actually a pretty good trilogy. Every match in that trilogy ended in a knockout, and Cuevas won every fight. The first fight was was a bit of an upset, because it was a left hand because I guess people weren't expecting Cuevas to knock out Angel Espada, because it was like, hey man, this dude just lost his last fight. He was outboxed, out-hustled in his last fight, so he's not going to beat Espada. And he proved a lot of skeptics wrong. He defeated Espada, knocked him out like in the second round with left hand, and he kept hurting him with the left hand. And and you look at Cuevas' fights, he knew how to get the knockout. He knew how to, he really knew how to fight. It's the best way to describe Cuevas. He just knew how to fight. He knew how to zero in on his opponents, and he stood up straight, stood up tall, and and used his reach, and was setting fighters up with the left hand. He wasn't really the most technically sound boxer at all, by any means. Was not the most technically sound, but he knew how to get the knockout. He knew how to close the show. He knew how to close the distance, and that's pretty much one of the reasons why he's my number 5 welterweight this week, because he knew how to fight. He knew how to close the distance. There were times that Cuevas just threw, and on top of that, his body attack was incredible. How he would go to the body, how he would and how he would just mix up the shots to the body. He threw different shots to the body. He'd throw hooks, straight rights, even threw crosses to the body, which was odd, looking at, throwing shots to the body, throwing it to different parts of the body. And, it was amazing because, he was definitely taking movement away. One fight that'll always stand out to me is the fight against, I believe his name was Henry Watson, or Watson, whatever, but, he fought a fight by the name of Watson, and, he just kept, hurting him. The left hand just kept landing. And Watson was just there the whole fight. He was just there, there to fight the whole fight, and Cuevas just, eventually knocked him out in like the 9th round, technical knockout. But in all of his defenses except for one, all the defenses that he won except for one, and like 11 to 12 title defenses, all of those victories were knockouts except for one. He had one unanimous decision, and other than that, he had like 10 or 11 knockouts. So that's amazing. That's amazing to me. But yeah, he's my number 5 welterweight for this week, and 4-year championship reign. And really his career afterward wasn't too good, wasn't too bright, but his career as a champion, he did step it up, and he did improve. Improve a bit as a fighter, and it was a pretty good championship reign for 4 years. But anyway, that was the distance. Thanks for watching. Peace.